All right. Hello, Titans. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Financial 101 webinar. My name is Lupa, and I am the Programming Graduate Assistant at Tuffy's Basic Needs. Today, we are joined by Marco Mendoza, who is a Client Services Counselor at the Office of Financial Aid. He will be providing us with an in-depth presentation about financial aid, and we will have time at the end of our presentation for a moderated Q&A. Also, you are able to submit questions into the for Q&A at any time during the presentation. Just make sure that you submit them in the chat and that they're going to Tuffy's Basic Needs. I also want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel and our website. And we please kindly ask you to keep yourself muted throughout the presentation. So without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to Marco to introduce himself, and we will begin our presentation today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the Dean of Students and Tuffy's Basic Needs for giving us an opportunity to share with you all a little more about the financial aid process, the awarding process, application process, and as Lupa mentioned, you're more than welcome to type any questions up, and we'll do our best to answer them for you and get you as much knowledge as we can. So we'll start with our presentation. All right, so Financial Aid 101, understanding the application process. The first thing we want all students to know when they are applying for financial aid is that there are two applications that they must submit in order to be considered for financial aid. The first is known as the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, more commonly known as the FAFSA application. And this is an application that is available for U.S. citizens or permanent non-residents. This is the most common application we work with, but we also have a different application that some students are eligible for. And this is the California Dream Act application. We like to call it the CDA. And this is an application that is available for anybody who is an AB 540 eligible student. This is a student who is typically undocumented and who may have received a Social Security number through the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, otherwise known as the DACA program, through the Executive Action. And with these two applications, we're able to take all the information that's provided on them and determine what it is that we can offer students. And we'll get into that in just a bit. But before we do that, we want to let all students know that there is a major deadline of March 2nd. And this is what we consider to be the priority deadline for both the FAFSA and Dream Act applications. And the reason this is so important for us is that we use this deadline to determine who it is that we can offer grant funding to, specifically the State University grant. And this is a very important grant that we'll get into in just a bit, because it allows you, it's a grant that can help pay for tuition. So it's a grant that is a major benefit and source of financial assistance for students due to the cost of attendance. And so this is a deadline we honor and we use, and we encourage all students to submit their applications by. Now, how it's financially awarded? The first thing we look at is what we call the estimated family contribution. In short, it's a number that is derived from all the information that you submit on the FAFSA or Dream Act application. So when you're inputting all of your family size, your income, your family household, assets, and all that information into the application, there is a number that is given to you at the very end, a dollar figure. That dollar figure is your estimated family contribution. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what you will have to pay for school dollar for dollar, but it's what the U.S. Department of Education believes your family can contribute for your cost of attendance at a university or college. And so that is a number we use to help us determine what it is that we can offer you in terms of grant funding, loan funding, and so forth. And once you complete both of these applications, again, by the March 2nd deadline, every now and then we have to select students for what we call verification. Now, what this process means is that every year, and we'll get to that in just a bit, the Department of Education asks us to verify information that was inputted on the application. So this could be something like household size, income for the 2018 year, and so forth. And so we also have a priority deadline for those documents. And this year it was in May 8th. And it's still to be determined for the upcoming 2021 academic year, for the 21-22 academic year. But we definitely do our best to educate students on this deadline and to let them know in advance what that deadline will be. But those are the two things we look at, those two deadlines, to determine when an application is complete and ready to be reviewed. And finally, the other component is that we have to follow different policies. There are a number of different rules and regulations that we have to follow from the U.S. Department of Education, the DOE, or the California Student Aid Commission. This is the state agency that awards things like the Cal Grant, the Middle Class Scholarship. And there are just certain things we have to abide by, and that we use as you can say, a guideline for in order to be able to award financial aid for students. And lastly, funding is limited and it isn't guaranteed to students. So it isn't always guaranteed to students. So what that means is that, for example, if you submitted all of your documents by the priority deadlines, you submit your application by the March 2nd deadline, then there are certain grants like the State University Grant that is very limited on funding and is dependent on how much funding our university receives from the state, from the Chancellor's office. And unfortunately, even all students who are eligible for this grant aren't always able to receive it due to the limited availability of the grant funding. So that's what we mean by financially is limited. Now, if you've already submitted a FAFSA application or a Dream Act application in the past, you'll likely be able to see that you've been asked for tax information from 2 years ago. For this 2021 academic year, we asked for, or the application asked for 2018 tax info. And for the upcoming 21-22 academic year, they'll be asking for 2019 tax info. And now the reason they do this, the application does this, is that it allows you to avoid having to guess what it is that your parents will file for a future year or what they maybe haven't filed. It allows you to use the IRS data retrieval tool, which is something we recommend all students to be able to do if they can. So if you are a FAFSA applicant and you have the ability to use the IRS data retrieval tool, please do so. What it does is that it just pulls in all of your info from the IRS, all of your tax info, and it really allows you to not have to type in any of those numbers that can be confusing at times for students. So we highly recommend doing that. And again, it reduces a lot of errors. And so oftentimes we see in our office is that when students type in numbers manually, whether it's an income figure for 18 or 19, whatever calendar year they're being asked to submit, sometimes they get numbers wrong, or they might get the number of family household members wrong. But when you use the data retrieval tool, it eliminates a lot of those errors because it just pulls that information straight from the IRS, the folks, the government agency that takes care of all of the income tax paperwork. So we highly recommend students to do that when they are submitting their FAFSA application. And something that has been a very common question for us this summer, and that I think will be a very common question for the rest of this academic year, is what if my financial situation has changed since 2018? Because again, the FAFSA application asks for tax information from 2 years prior. And we understand that students oftentimes, especially during this year, with everything that's gone on with COVID and the loss of jobs in certain cases for families and students, if you are one of those students whose family financial situation has changed due to whatever reason, layoff, loss of income due to loss of hours at work, I would recommend you to contact our office, to give us a call, to send us an email, to send us a message, and ask, as you can speak to a representative about this situation of yours, and to see if this is something that could potentially have you sit down with a counselor via Zoom, via phone, and have a conversation about that, and see what it is that we could potentially do to work with your situation, and potentially have your financial aid be reevaluated based off of your circumstances and off of your specific financial situation. It's a case-by-case basis, but if you're in one of those situations where your family has had a significant loss of income, a significant change in your financial situation, please give us a call, send us an email or message, and we'll be sure to be in touch with you in regards to what we can potentially do for you. Now, earlier we mentioned documents. Every year students get selected for documents. The amount of students really varies. There's a percentage of students that the Department of Education always wants us to just double check the information on. And again, we have a priority deadline. For this year, it was May 8th. And for the upcoming year, it should be sometime in the spring as well, but the date hasn't been determined yet. But some of those common questions, some of those common verification forms are household size, so how many people are in your family's household, asset information, so do your parents have any investments, any properties, anything that is considered an asset, and lastly, student and parent tax information are the most common questions. And again, it's just information that the U.S. Department of Education wants us to double check to verify a student's eligibility for specific grant funding or loan funding. And whenever a student does miss those deadlines, whenever a student is unable to submit a document, or they just miss an email and didn't see that document posted on their to-do list, there are consequences. And the reason being is that it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks during this time for a document to be processed and for your financially to be awarded. And so whenever students miss those deadlines, it just delays your awarding. It could potentially lead to having you make a payment out of pocket, and in an effort to avoid being disenrolled from your classes. So it's really important for students to submit all their documents by the deadline and considered a priority 1 student, which is something we work off of. And lastly, missing a deadline can disqualify you from certain types of aid. So as I mentioned earlier, the State University grant, for example, that we'll go over in just a bit, is a type of grant that is dependent on not just need, but also priority. So when a student submits everything by the priority deadline, they can be considered for the State University grant. Now, what are the types of financial aid that a student can be eligible for? We'll go over that just now. For any FAFSA applicant, the Pell Grant is a type of grant that you could potentially receive. This is a type of grant that is entirely dependent on your status as either full-time or part-time student, as well as what your EFC is, your estimated family contribution. If you have an EFC that's less than the amount listed here, the 5,711, you can receive a partial Pell Grant. And the lower that EFC is, the more Pell Grant you could potentially receive. So that is a federal type of grant. Then we also have a state university grant. This is a grant that's funded by the state of California that is meant for California residents or AB 540 students, and that is dependent, again, on priority, on students who submit their application by the priority deadlines and submit their documents by the priority deadlines. And this is a grant that goes towards paying your tuition. And the Pell Grant is a type of grant that goes towards your overall cost of attendance. So it's not specific to your tuition or any type of specific fees. We also have things like the Cal Grant. This is a grant that, again, is funded by the state of California. It's for California residents, and that goes towards paying tuition, is also dependent on different deadlines and income, family income ceilings, family income assets. So it's dependent on a few different factors. But again, for California residents and students who meet those specific priority deadlines. For families who have higher incomes, who maybe miss out on the Cal Grant, they are at times awarded something called the Middle Class Scholarship. This is another state grant that is awarded to students to help with their cost of tuition. And there's a number of different things that they look at in terms of income and assets, but it is intended for students who are California residents and who are enrolled at least half-time. Another really popular form of financial aid is what we call federal work study. And this is something that we encourage all students to take advantage of if they have the funding available to them. And the reason being is that it allows them to work on campus, to have another source of income for them and another source of revenue coming in to help them with their cost of attendance. And it's a great opportunity for students to gain experience in the workplace and in the work field that they could potentially join once they're graduated while still being students. So if you are interested in working on campus and you do have federal work study funding that's been awarded to you, we recommend going on Titan Connections webpage. We took a little screenshot here of where you can look for different jobs on campus. And I can definitely let you know there are a lot of offices on campus that hire students. An office like mine, the Office of Financial Aid, Office of Admissions, Outreach, doing campus tours when we eventually go back on campus. These are all different departments on campus that hire student employees, student assistants. And if you are interested, definitely take a look at this website to see the type of opportunities are available for you. And something that is also offered to students based on their eligibility that isn't always the most attractive offer, but it is a very much an offer that is oftentimes needed by students, and these are loans. So when it comes to loans, we essentially work off of two different types of loans. One are federal loans, and the others are what we call alternative loans, which are the private loans through private banks. And so the federal loans, for example, are for undergraduates are the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These are loans that you don't have to pay back until 6 months after you graduate or fall below 6 units of enrollment. They have a fixed interest rate. And for the first time, and in my experience working in financial aid as a student and in higher education in general, this is the first time we see loan interest rates this low. So 2.75 is the lowest I have seen in a long time. If you are a student who is considering loans, you're welcome to go on our website and get a little more in detail information on it. or on the Student Aid website, studentaid.gov, to get more info on this. But we understand that it's not always what students want to do to borrow, but it is definitely something that students can take advantage of if they are awarded them. Another type of loan for undergraduate students that parents can take advantage of are the Parent Plus loans. These are loans that parents would have to apply for on their end through studentaid.gov, and that parents, they run their credit, they do an application, and once they are accepted, it would be applied towards your cost of attendance as a student. More information can also be gained on studentaid.gov or our website, fullerton.edu/financial aid. And lastly, for any student who is a Dream Act applicant, there is a loan called the Dream Loan. And this is a loan that is funded through the state of California and that is available strictly for Dream Act applicants. It very much mirrors the subsidized loan that our FAFSA applicants are eligible for, in that it has the same interest rate and same repayment periods. I may have missed it earlier, but the main difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans are that when it comes to the subsidized loan, as long as you're enrolled in at least 6 or more units, interest doesn't accumulate. It doesn't accrue on your loan. So as long as you remain in 6 units, if you borrow $1,000, for example, it'll remain $1,000 by the time you have to pay it back. Whereas the unsubsidized loan, interest begins to accrue, begins to build up while you're still in school, regardless of the amount of units that you're enrolled in. And so whenever you have to borrow, we highly recommend students to always borrow the subsidized loan funding first before they reach into the unsubsidized. But if you have any specific questions or want a little more explanation, you can always give us a call, send us an email, and we'll be sure to do our best to break that down for you. Now, whenever students do accept their loans, once they accept it on their portal, they have to take 2 additional steps in order for that loan funding to disperse. And the first step is a loan entrance counseling, which is essentially a bit of a tutorial, an online tutorial that's completed through the studentaid.gov website. And the last is the master promissory note. And this is more of a contract where you essentially sign and say that you promise to pay back the loans once you have finished school or are no longer attending school. And lastly, aside from the federal loans, the other type of loan that students can take advantage of are what we call the alternative loans. So these are loans that you can apply with whichever private bank, credit union, or just lending institution that you would like to apply for. And it does vary. Their interest rates vary, their repayment periods vary, so we encourage you to really do your research on these. But we honestly encourage all students to take advantage of their federal loan funding first before they do tap into any type of private loan funding, because interest rates and repayment periods tend to be more student-friendly and just a better deal for students overall. Now, what if you need more financial aid? If you go on your Student Center, as seen on the screenshot here, there is a scholarships tab that you can click on and take a look for any type of available scholarships. I'll be honest with you, at this time of the year in the fall, most scholarships have been awarded and have been assigned to certain students, but you're welcome to take a look to see if there's anything that may be available for you at this time. And we definitely encourage you to look in the spring, which is when, again, the FAFSA application is due, when most applications are available and open to students. So I would encourage you to definitely take a look at this later in the fall and earlier in the spring semester to see what type of scholarships are available to you on campus, off campus, and what it is that might interest you. And these are other websites that you could potentially look at to see what you may be interested in, things like FastWeb, which is essentially a scholarship search engine, Hispanic Scholarship Foundation, Gates Millennium, and so forth. And once, if you're a student who has already been awarded for the academic year, you're always welcome to take a look at your financial aid award package on your Student Center, as shown here. And once you're on your Student Center, what you want to do is go on the left-hand side and take a look under the Finances tab, specifically the Financial Aid tab. Click on View Financial Aid. It'll take you to a financial aid award package. If you haven't already accepted your financial aid award package, you can view it there and take a look at what you've been awarded for the academic year, and also a breakdown of a semester by semester award package. Now, for any students who have accepted loans or who plan on accepting loans, or maybe haven't made up their mind on those loans just yet, we want you to know that we always encourage students to only borrow what they need and to not borrow more than what they need, because at the end of the day, it's money you have to pay back. It's only a loan. And so if you are a student who is offered, for a 3rd year or 4th year student who, for example, is offered $5,500 in subsidized loan, if you know you don't need that $5,500, just take out the amount that you do need. And and know that if you do borrow a lesser amount, so let's say you're offered 5,500, but you know that you only need 1,000, and you borrow 1,000. If later on in the semester or in the academic year, you want to accept a larger amount of loan funding, or an amount of loan funding that you just didn't accept the first time around, you can always give us a call, send us an email, and let us know so that we can have you submit a form. It's a pretty simple form to request additional loan funding so that we can offer it on your behalf. And so it's pretty simple to either accept, adjust, and so forth. It's really just a matter of contacting us and having you fill out a form to adjust your award package. But you have most of the academic year to accept your loans. I want to say you have until about the end of the spring semester, so just about the entire academic year to let us know if you want to accept loan funding if you haven't done so already, or to adjust your loans. Now, when it's financially disbursed, typically 10 days before the start of the semester. So for students for this fall semester, it was around mid-August, and looking forward into the spring semester, it'll be early to mid-January as well for the spring semester. And financially, it is disbursed twice a week. So for example, if you're a student who is expecting a recent loan they accepted, or just an award package, financially it pays out typically twice a week. And another typical question we're getting right now is about the middle class scholarship. So I know that the California Student Aid Commission, that state agency that awards the middle class scholarship, has let students know, notify them that they are eligible for a specific award or a specific amount of money, but we typically don't disperse that funding until after census. For us, census is 4 weeks after the start of the semester. And it's when we take a snapshot of the amount of units that you're enrolled in, and we essentially do a final adjustment of the financial aid based on your enrollment at the end of the 4th week mark. Now, when financial aid does disperse and does pay out, the first thing that financial aid does is that it goes and pays for your tuition and fees. So if you were awarded a Cal grant, a state university grant, a Cal grant, whatever type of grant funding, and let's say you accepted some loan funding along with that, it'll go towards paying your tuition and fees. And if you live on campus, it'll also go towards paying your on-campus housing fees. But if you don't live on campus, let's say you commute, you're a commuter student who lives at home, or you live off campus, after your financial aid has paid off your tuition, your tuition and fees, if there is an additional amount of funding remaining, what it does is that it will then be dispersed to you as a refund, as either a check or a direct deposit. So if you have already enrolled in direct deposit, that money will be sent to your bank account within a few business days after it does disperse, meaning pay out. But if you have not enrolled in direct deposit, that money will be sent to you as a check to the mailing address that is listed on your student center. So make sure that address is up to date. But I would definitely recommend students to sign up for direct deposit, because it is the quickest and most efficient way for you to receive that funding. And once you have already started school and you're in the middle of your academic life here at Cal State Fullerton, it's important for us to educate students on what we call the Satisfactory Academic Progress Policy. And it's essentially a policy that has us monitor 3 things in order to ensure that students remain on track to graduate and complete the program on time, and that they remain eligible for financial aid per federal regulations. And so the first is GPA. And in general, what you want to do is always maintain a C average, a 2.0 GPA. But if you are in just your second term, the minimum is a 1.5. Your third term at CSUF, a minimum is 1.7. So this is mainly for first, second year students. But once you're past your second year and past your 4th term in your 4th semester, we essentially look for a 2.0 minimum GPA. The second standard that we look at is what we call PACE. And this is essentially ensuring that students are completing at least 2/3 of the classes they're attempting. And for us, that percentage is 66.67. So let's say you are a student who is in their first semester at CSUF, you're a first-year student, and you have enrolled in 12 units, 4 classes, for example, and you decide that you want to drop 2 of your classes, and you remain in just 6 units. And so what that means is that for the semester, you are now at 50%, as opposed to the 100. So it's important to keep a kind of a track and how many units you're attempting and dropping or withdrawing from, because it does impact your satisfactory academic progress. So in general, what you want to do is complete as many of the units as possible as you're attempting. But if you have any questions on this, we always recommend you to check in with an academic advisor. If you know that you might have some issues with a class, or you can always give us a call and double check what this policy is, or go on our website, because we do list it on our website as well. And the last thing we look at when it comes to SAP, Satisfactory Academic Progress, is what we call unit cap. Now, when it comes to an undergraduate program, most degrees require around 120 units to graduate, but we understand that some programs have more units that they require. So we are able to award students up to 150% of the standard time frame of their program, which just means that you can essentially take up to 180 units worth of a program and still receive financial aid. And once you get close to that, we let you know. We let you know that you're getting close to your unit cap, your unit time frame, and once you have surpassed it, let you know that you are no longer eligible for financial aid. And so, if you're one of those students who is no longer meeting SAP or who has passed that 180 or getting really close to it, we do let you know about it, and we do give you the opportunity to appeal your Satisfactory Academic Progress decision by submitting an appeal application and any supporting documentation that can speak to your circumstances. So let's say you were a student that had maybe some family circumstances that came up. Maybe you had to withdraw due to medical reasons or whatever it may be. There is an appeal process that you can take to appeal the SAP decision, to have you be on probation and potentially receive financial aid. If you are one of those students, we definitely recommend you meet with us and give us a call so that you can speak to one of our representatives about what you could potentially do to appeal this process. But we do notify students via email. So if you are one of those students, take a look at your student email and look for that specific email. Now, we know that students, when they are awarded financial aid, when they're coming in as a first-year student, a second-year student, or really whatever year, this is oftentimes the first time that they receive a large lump sum of money that has to be budgeted over 5 months. So we definitely encourage students to do their best to budget that money for the entire academic term, the fall semester, spring semester, and so forth. As I mentioned earlier, when financial aid pays out, let's say you're a student that receives a full Pell Grant, a Cal Grant, and then you accept some loan funding because you're living off campus or living, commuting from home, but you have your expenses. We want you to know that that money is meant to be budgeted for the entire semester. And so there isn't going to be a separate disbursement of funds for that semester. The only other time you will receive additional funding will be the next semester, the spring semester. So you want to do your best to budget yourself for the entire semester and know that winter intersession. If you're a student who's interested in taking a class during the winter, we don't offer financial aid for that. So please budget as needed and know that these financial aid refunds, whether it's a direct deposit or a check, are intended for your educational expenses. So if you're a student who lives off campus and pays for rent, if you have to pay for your transportation, your school supplies, a computer, this is what it's meant for. You want to make sure that you use your refunds for your educational expenses and to not use them on unnecessary things like, maybe not right now, but in the past, maybe like a Disney pass or a vacation or anything that you just don't need. So you want to do your best to budget your money as best as you can. And something else we always want to educate students on is what we call the cost of attendance. And so, as you can see on our screen here, there are 3 different budgets that we have for students based off of their status as a commuter student, living on campus in the dorms, or living off campus. And based off of your status as one of these 3 populations, your costs will vary. And as you can see, one of the costs that stays the same regardless of your status as either on campus, off campus, or commuting is your cost of fees, of tuition and fees. That stays the same regardless. But costs that can vary are primarily your room and board. And so we want students to know that this is how we determine on top of your EFC, your FAFSA application, how much financial aid can be awarded to you, what your eligibility is, and so forth. We have to budget students based off of these 3 cost of attendance budgets, and we have to keep students within this, I guess you could say, limit of financial aid for the academic year. You're welcome to review this on your own time on our website as well, which is where I got the screenshot from. But know that this is how we determine how it is that students can be awarded financial aid for the academic year. And we always want to let students know that financial aid is cyclical. And what we mean by that is what you do this year, you're going to have to do again and again until you graduate. And so, for example, if you are a first-year student who applied for financial aid in this past fall, during your last year of high school, or even a continuing student that applied last fall, you're going to have to apply again this fall. The FAFSA application opens up October 1st of every year, and it's always due on March 2nd. So we encourage students to submit their application as early as they can so that they can be considered on time and not miss that priority deadline of March 2nd. And to keep an eye on our student center, because once you do submit your application, early in the spring is when we start, or definitely past the priority deadline is when we start to notify students of any type of documents they may have to submit, and to go ahead and to submit those documents if needed. We do this process every year until you graduate. And so please keep that in mind as you continue your education here at Cal State Fullerton. And if you are one of those students who has been selected for documents for this year or for future years, there's a few different ways you can submit them. The one I always encourage students to submit them by is through our online document submission platform. You can just find it on our website on fullerton.edu/financial aid, but you can also mail or mail or fax the documents at the information listed above. And we like to let students know that we do not accept email submissions, and the reason being is that it's just simply for security purposes. And so we want to make sure that students, as they're submitting, oftentimes is very sensitive information with social security numbers or just private information, to do so the most secure way, which for us would be online through our document submission platform via mail or fax. And while we are not currently open physically, we want to let students know that we are very much open virtually. And we are very much available to meet with you, whether it's myself, one of my other colleagues, via Zoom with one of our counselors. If you need to meet with a counselor via Zoom, via phone, you can always give us a call at the number listed, send us an email, or even send us a direct message through Instagram. We're very active on Instagram and on social media. And we have a lot of good information on our website. So we definitely encourage students to go on our website and visit our FAQs, our frequently asked questions. We do our best to update those as much as we can throughout the semester with any questions that are just relevant at that specific time. So we always encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions. And we recently, in the past few months, launched the capability for students to ask us questions through our website. So if you're a student or a prospective student that would like to ask us a question, you can do so through our website. And it's similar to an email, which is just you send a message to our office and one of our staff members will reply to you as soon as we're able to. And we just wanted to list a few more resources on here for you all so that we can best assist you on campus through our office, through student financial services, on-campus housing, and so forth. So here's just some additional information for anybody who may be in need of it. And that is the end of our presentation. So I'll just leave it back on the other resources page so that we can go ahead and have that be available for students.
Thank you, Marco, for that informative presentation. Now we do have some questions in the chat. So one of them reads, if I do not accept all of the loans or federal work study available to me, can I accept them at a later date in the semester?
Yes. So if you were a student who was offered loans, you can definitely accept them at a later time. You have most of the academic year. I want to say maybe up until the last month of the spring semester. So just give us a call or send us an email and we'll do our best to reoffer them to you, or just have you submit a form to have them be reoffered to you.
Thank you. Another question reads, is it true that if I don't use my work study this semester, I won't be able to receive federal work study again?
When it comes to federal work study, it is a type of funding that is very limited. And so there's only a select number of students that can really take advantage of it. So if you're interested in working, definitely apply, definitely submit your applications and start interviewing as soon as you can, because positions, in general, positions are limited on campus. There are only so many jobs available, but there's also so much money available. So if you are interested in working on campus, you want to do so this semester and get that process going this semester, because the funding might not be there for the spring.
Thank you. Another student asks, if I am awarded a scholarship, is my financial aid package reduced?
So when it comes to scholarships, let's say you're a student who is awarded an outside scholarship from an outside organization, what we have to do is always fit it within that budget. As I showed earlier, that cost of attendance, you can think of it as a limit of financial aid that we can offer you for the academic year. So if for example, you've been awarded up to your cost of attendance, we will definitely award it to you, but we have to make room, sometimes by reducing loans, oftentimes reducing loans, and so forth. We do our best to always leave you with as much free money, grant funding as possible. So if you are a student who is awarded a scholarship, the first thing you want to do is let them know, your donor know, to to send your money to the Student Business Services Office, because they're the folks who process all the checks and the fees. And once they receive that scholarship money, they let us know about the funds, how much money is being offered to you, and any stipulations, like only for the spring semester, the fall semester, and so forth.
Okay, thank you. We do have, so can you talk a little bit more about how a student goes through an income appeal? I believe you're muted.
All right, sorry about that. When it comes to income appeals, it's really a case-by-case basis. And as a counselor, I can let you know that we've met with a lot of students over the summer in regards to income appeals because of COVID and the oftentimes drastic change that's occurred in a family's financial situation due to job loss, income loss, or whatever it may be. But that appeal process really varies by student to student. So if you're a student who is interested in it, or having that conversation, I would encourage you to give us a call and set up an appointment to meet with a counselor via Zoom, so that we can have that conversation with you. Not every student is eligible for an income appeal, and we're able to find that through that conversation. So if you're interested, just give us a call, send us an email, and we'll get that process going with you.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, if I turn in any incomplete documents as soon as possible, would I still be awarded financial aid?
We'll still award you what you're eligible for, but the thing about returning documents that have already been submitted is the process is delayed a bit. So just because you're submitting a document after the priority deadline doesn't mean you won't get awarded financial aid. It means you wouldn't be eligible for specific types of funding, like a state university grant, for example, if you submit something past the priority deadline. But yes, if you submit a document that if you are resubmitting a document, you will still be awarded financial aid that you're eligible for.
Okay, thank you. Is federal work study only available for FAFSA applicants?
Yes, federal work study is available only to FAFSA applicants because it's awarded by the U.S. Department of Education. When it comes to DREAM Act applicants are only eligible for state-funded forms of financial aid. So things like the Cal Grant, State University Grant, and Middle Class Scholarship, and the Dream Loan.
Thank you. If a student has paid for 6 units, they need to switch a class, but ultimately they're going to stay at 6. Does that change their financial aid package?
So when it comes to that, it really depends. I want to say on how fast you can do that switch, because our system, the system we use to process financial aid, essentially can capture you at less than 6 units. But ultimately, if you do the same day switch, let's say today you decide that you want to swap a class, as long as you do so relatively quickly, you should be able to remain at 6 units worth of financial aid. So we're going to award you what it is you're eligible for, but do know that when we talk about census, that snapshot of the amount of units that you're enrolled in, we do that every semester. We take a look at how many units you're in, how much financial aid you've been awarded, and we essentially do one final adjustment of financial aid based off of that enrollment. So if by census we capture that you're in 6 units, we'll leave you at that, and we won't adjust your financial aid or take anything away. But if we find that you went from 6 to 9 or 6 to 12, we'll be able to award you what it is that you're eligible for at that time.
Okay, thank you. So those are all the questions that we've received in our chat. And if you have any specific questions that are pertinent to your case, we encourage you to please reach out to the financial aid office. And so this concludes our presentation today. I want to thank everybody for coming to our Financial Aid 101 webinar. I do want to remind you that it was recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to join us next week, Wednesday, September 16th at 3 p.m. for our Spend Smart, Eat Smart webinar, where you will learn how to maximize your budget while you're grocery shopping. And also, before you leave, please take a couple seconds to fill out this feedback form. And once you're done, I hope you have a great day, Titans.